That's a good question. I think some people have to learn it that way. And so a lot of times why we all should really listen to older people is because they've sort of just lived and wound up learning this way on their own just through the course of life, you know. At the same time, I think that you can do it now, right? It just takes kind of commitment. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people are willing to meditate, but they're also the same people who are like on their phone while they like watch TV, while they talk to a person, and when they're alone, they got to check their phone a bunch of times a day. They got to, you know, be plugged into email. And I was one of those dudes for the longest time. So I think a lot of it comes down to just being able to be whole, solid, grounded, and complete. What that means is also kind of opening up to your caveman right brain, which is the creative artist brain, and also the, you know, the lizard brain, the reptilian brain in a lot of ways. And that's also the place where you're going to receive and give the best love. But it's also something, because it is in part physiological, it's something you can kind of just like get to usually by a certain like kind of breathing initially, like ha breathing is something I'm a fan of, and then also certain, and that's Mike taught me that, and then certain just sort of almost like eye manipulation, like going to big open spaces, like taking a walk in nature, going to the beach, things like that are fun and feel good. For a lot of reasons, you know, and I'm not going to do what I used to do and break this down into one physiological thing. At the same time, there's also a physical component too to why that feels good. Part of it's just it kind of gets you less linear and fixated on a screen or your problems, and it kind of like lets your eyes actually adjust, and there's actually a physical response in the body for it. So, you know, it's a both thing. That's a little bit of the science behind it, and there's also a lot of, you know, soulful reasons why those things are just fun, you know, and good for you.
You mentioned, I believe it was called breathing. Can you just kind of go into detail, maybe give us a little example of what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. I think afterwards I'll definitely connect you guys with Mike, so you can have him on to talk about the whys and the whats and the whens, and I'll do like a kind of a idiot's dummy's guide to it. Basically, you just take a big, deep breath in your nose. You guys can do it right now if you want. And then you let it out like a balloon just letting out air. You don't force it out. And you almost kind of purse your throat a little bit, if that's kind of tough to you, without creating more tension in your forehead and neck, which we do not want. Just almost like kind of a soft pufferfish sort of look to your cheeks. Doing it like that way can help too.
And is there a number of breaths that you do like that? Or does it vary?
I don't like setting it. As I've been taught it, you don't want to set numbers, because that will result in you kind of keeping like a thought process and a linear mindset. You almost just want to keep doing it until you feel a little bit better, you know, and instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to do 10 and then go like, oh fuck, it's not working, you know. So you just kind of want to do it till you feel good, man. I mean, and I've had like coming off some of the like worst and best times of my life recently, because of, you know, some of that stuff I told you I was dealing with. At the same time, it feels a lot better to be whole, solid, grounded, and complete, like feeling all these things instead of running from them, you know? And so the little ways to check in like this, just going on a walk in nature, like by the beach, just sitting with yourself, doing some simple breathing, a lot of that kind of stuff, just you know, it really helps. And then the other side of it is just not always making everything about doing and achieving and, like I said, needing to stay at the top of the mountain, just taking time to do nothing, you know, like the stuff that you kind of almost like just, it's hard to talk about this because it's something I just do impulsively now. But just in, you know, spending time with friends, like going out, being social, laughing, seeing movies, like stuff that like a lot of the people in the spiritual space really like kind of poo-poo and say, oh, that's just the mainstream society. It's like, well, sports are fun, you know, like they're not, yeah, there's product placement. Yeah, there's you could argue they're kind of weapons of mass distraction in some ways, a lot of these things, but at the same time, like there's unity in that. It's just it's play, it's fun. Just stop analyzing it, just enjoy it, And I think that's what I would like to leave people who want to listen to this from more of that mind, body, spiritual side with, is that it's just a lot of what people, anyone who's trying to tell you need to get somewhere for nirvana or enlightenment is full of shit. You really just need to kind of let go and do what makes you happy, be okay with yourself. And I'm probably going to change some of my answers if you guys talk to me in even just 6 months or a year from now. But I do think that's headed in the right direction, like the bigger picture, the greater purpose.
Yeah, just be yourself, enjoy life. Don't take it too seriously with yourself. It's funny you talk about getting out and playing. I've been a lifelong runner, competitive at a very high level, and I'm at the point now where I don't wear a watch, I don't use GPS, and when I go out either into the mountains with my friends or I go out with some of my road running friends, they're just completely blown away that I don't care about mileage or time or pace. And I'm like, I'm 43. Like, yeah, I'm going to race, I'm going to compete, but I don't care. Like, I'm going to focus on my breathing. I'm going to focus that I'm out in the woods with my friends and we might find some mushrooms along the way. Or, we were out last weekend and we stumbled upon a ton of Anemina muscaria mushrooms. So we were like kid in the candy store with finding those. They were beautiful. But yeah, I mean, I'm just going out to have fun and enjoy this. Like, I don't need to worry about how long it's going to take or what our pace is while we're doing it or how many miles it's going to be. Like, let's just go out and enjoy the morning. Let's get up early enough so we can catch the sunrise at, 11, 12, 13,000 feet, whatever it may be. And, just roll with it.
Yeah, man, I really see what you're saying. I think also, too, when you mentioned mushrooms, that kind of reminded me that a lot of times you'll hear about these people in the spiritual space that have done ayahuasca like 50 fucking times, and I'm like, what? Why? I get that some people like a lot of prisoners, like a lot of people might need more signposts than others. They might need to have more shit thrown in their face before they can really do some of this work. At the same time, a lot of these people that are kind of what I call they have like white collar sort of trauma, not like true PTSD. They more like childhood playground stuff like me, like everybody has, kind of no big deal stuff, but stuff that can definitely alter your life path if you let it. A lot of these people, I think that's sort of a result of not doing the work, I've only done I'm looked at, I'm getting looked at a little bit as someone who maybe knows a little bit of what they're talking about in this space. And I've only done ayahuasca 3 times, I haven't microdosed in a while, actually. In fact, I actually hurt someone, really close to me because I had them do some microdosing, which is not to say anything bad about that. It's just to say, you got to meet people at their level. You got to just, also not try to change things that aren't meant to be changed. To tie it back to the point, though, a lot of times what psychedelics are actually truly meant to be, if you listen to the shamans and just sort of even the American sort of positioners of them, are more of signposts, right? To show you the way and maybe point some things out to you. On top of that, a lot of them are sort of meant to be these substitutes for a rite of passage in a society that doesn't really have rites of passage anymore. I've talked about this before, and I will again. We have a lot of different rites of passage thrown at us in media and movies, and we don't really have a society that sets us up to do that unless we take it upon ourselves to move, to change, to do that kind of stuff. So sometimes psychedelics, if you're dealing with that kind of stuff, writer's block, relative death, whatever, they can be a little sort of hint to what you maybe ought to feel like or ought to deal with, and then from there, what you really want to do is actually do the work itself. A lot of this sitting with yourself, being with yourself, just being that we talked about earlier. Life isn't meant to be this hard. It's actually meant to be pretty easy. If we are related to apes, something Ryan likes to say is that they spend like 90% of their time just chilling. You know what I mean? I know society doesn't necessarily set us up for that. At the same time, I think a lot of people look for every excuse and like not to actually chill. I have clients that are talking about wanting to go unplug from the world by going to Burning Man, and it's like, well, if you craft a life you really have to unplug from, then that means your shit's broken.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jimmy and I talk about this all the time. I've had 10 ceremonies, and each time I'm always a little reluctant to go back in, minus the last one. Last one was a really beautiful experience, but that's what we talk about all the time, is that you interact with these strangers in ceremony, and you some people are very braggadocious by how many experiences they've had or how many ceremonies they've sat in, and then they're the first ones that are retching at the bucket, and they're so dramatic about it and so loud and just taking away from my experience. And that's kind of the same conclusion that we've come to, is that they continue to do this, but they don't do the work on the back end afterwards and the integration and taking those messages that they received. And clearly, by the way that you're purging, you probably didn't take it seriously on the way in, going in with adhering to the dieta and doing things the right way. And I was listening to a podcast with a guy who claimed to be, he's a health guy in the health field, and he had said that after his second ceremony that him and his girlfriend had sex, and I was just kind of like blown away by that, like that, so disrespectful of the medicine and the plant and the principle of everything. So we couldn't agree more with that yeah, there's these people that they like to talk about how many times they've done it, but clearly when you're in ceremony with them, you can tell that they're just not receiving the messages or doing the work on either end of these experiences.
And just to add on to what Richie was saying and what you had touched on before, doing the work and using the messages you get in the ceremony, my first psychedelic experience was with Iboga in 2012. And I was going into that thinking that was the magic pill that was going to fix all my trauma. I was going to be like I was when I was a kid. It was going to get rid of everything. And then I went in and got punched straight in the face, realized I wasn't ready to deal with things. And it took me like 2.5 to 3 years of just really focusing on what I had gotten and realizing like, oh, there's a lot of work to be done. And there's nothing fun about doing certain psychedelics. And you realize that really quick with something like Iboga. It's like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of work to be put in, and you had no idea what you were getting yourself into when you got into this. But now you're in it, and now you have no other choice but to do the work or, lose your mind.
Yeah, bro. You wanted a Happy Meal, not in a disrespectful way. You thought you were getting a Happy Meal. You thought the toy came with the meal, and you were going to get your side orders and your main course and all that. And it's like, that's, a lot of times people come to me and they're like, it's after a psychedelic experience. And then they're like, well, it was phenomenal. And okay, you're still kind of at square one. The people who've done a ton, they're almost more linear in left brain. It's like, a lot of them just sort of had that same experience. And it's like, well, that it's great. I'm a huge fan of them. It's just like the context to put them in is more like show you the way, almost like a mentor. And then you kind of always get what you need out of them, I find. You'll have random experiences and like a dream, and then you'll have other ones that are like showing you exactly what you need to see, like, or think about that you've sort of been pushing aside, And, I almost cringe if I go and listen to myself talking on some of these other podcasts, even like a year ago. Like Bledsoe's is pretty good. There's even then, man, you could kind of hear the dissociative state in my voice. Whereas if you like replay this and listen to even just my voice, it's like I was, for whatever reason, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly why. Probably just some of that stress, putting pressure on myself. Some mild childhood stuff. And I think most men are like this, if they're being honest with themselves. I was just so dissociated from my own feelings that it's like I cringe going back and watching myself. So it's really refreshing to be able to go on your show and talk about this, because it's more mentally stimulating and emotionally fulfilling for me now to then just be okay with leaving that out there and telling people, hey, yeah, go back